Hello, boys and girls. Welcome. I'm Miss Meghan Humphrey from Myers Middle School, and today we are going to learn how to cite textual evidence while making inferences while we're reading. Of course, we're going to go over our standard, our sixth grade standard, which is sixth grade reading literature 1, which states citing textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences are drawn from the text. Okay, today's learning targets. In order for us to master these standards, as you know, good readers, you will be, I can cite textual evidence in order to support an analysis. And analysis means showing an understanding of what the text says explicitly. As we know, explicitly means directly stated. Our second learning target is, I can cite textual evidence in order to support inferences. As you know, inferences is a conclusion based on what you already know, that educated guess. Drawn, taken from the text. All right, so we have a formula for when we are drawing our inferences, our educated guess. We take facts, that's information from the text or evidence, plus our prior knowledge and or experience, what we already know. And of course, we take those both together and they equal an inference. All right, so today we're going to read about Mr. Thomas and Miss Thomas. The question that we have to explore today is, why will Mr. Thomas see Miss Thomas soon? Why will Mr. Thomas see Miss Thomas soon? We're going to use evidence from the text and background knowledge to support our inference, okay? So we're going to read our story today. Mr. Thomas sat on the front porch of his house in a bathrobe and bunny slippers with his head in his hands. He was holding the daily newspaper. The sun shined brightly in the sky. His neighbors were coming out of their houses and getting in their cars. Mr. Thomas sighed. His neighbor, Mr. R., stepped out on his porch and saw Mr. Thomas. "Did it again, huh?" said Mr. R. Mr. Thomas replied, "Yep." Mr. R. chuckled and said, "Here, Mr. Thomas, you can use my cell phone. I could even keep a key over here if you wanted." Tom thankfully grabbed the cell phone and called his wife. "Honey, I did it again." Mr. R. heard Miss Thomas yelling at Mr. Thomas in a distorted, high-pitched squeal. "Yes, dear, I'm so sorry. I'll see you soon." Mr. Thomas returned the phone, sighed deeply, and ran his fingers through his hair. Okay, so remember the question we're going to explore is, why will Mr. Thomas see Miss Thomas soon? Why will he see her soon? So remember that in order for us to draw inferences, we must follow our formula. We're going to take what we already know from the text. As we know, Mr. Thomas locked himself outside of the house. That is our first piece of evidence. Our prior knowledge that we have with that evidence is, I know this because he is wearing a bathrobe and holding a newspaper, and he can't seem to go back into the house. We know if we're wearing a bathrobe, we are in the house. Okay, the inference that we're going to make with that is Miss Thomas is coming home to let Mr. Thomas in the house. Okay. We also found another piece of evidence to help us support that inference. His neighbor offers to keep a spare key for him in the future. Our prior knowledge with this is, I know this because she yelled at him as if he had caused her a major inconvenience. So we know all of that supports our inference of Miss Thomas is coming home to let Mr. Thomas in the house. So now, we're going to practice. You guys are going to practice at home with a partner. The questions we're going to explore today is, where was April? Why does Mr. Erickson want to talk about with April? And why does April have white circles around her eyes? Okay, I'm going to read this story aloud with you. Mr. Erickson was a manager at a small insurance company in Minnesota. One cold winter day, April McKenzie, one of his employees, approached him about some time off work. "This job is very important to me, Mr. Erickson, but I've been called into jury duty. When my government asks for my help, I have to answer the call." Mr. Erickson rubbed his forehead. "He really needed you here, April, but the government needs you more. Take the time. We'll be all right." Mr. Erickson had thought that they needed her there at the office, but they managed fine without her. When April returned a week later, Mr. Erickson noticed that most of her skin was bright shade of red, except for around her eyes. Pale white circles ran from the top of her eyebrows to the bottom of her cheeks. These pale circles were surrounded by sunburned flesh. That's when Mr. Erickson knew. April stepped into my office, there are some things we need to discuss. Mr. Erickson said anonymously. Now, I want you guys to go ahead, on a sheet of paper, go ahead and write your graphic organizer and go ahead and start practicing at home. So take the time to pause the screen at this time and reread the story and make your inferences. Now, we're going to review our answers that we made. The first question we had to answer, where was April? All right, so we're going to state some textual evidence to support that question. One thing we noticed is she was sunburned. That's from the text. Our prior knowledge is it's not sunny inside of any courtroom. We can only be sunburned if we're outside. The inference we can make about where was April was somewhere sunny and not at jury duty. Okay, the second question we have is, what does Mr. Erickson want to talk about with April? Our information that we have to support, he sees her sunburned face and calls her into his office immediately. Why do you think he called him into the office? Prior knowledge is Mr. Erickson is going to discipline or dismiss April for lying to him. The inference we can make with that is Mr. Erickson is going to discipline or dismiss April for lying to him, that she wasn't in that courtroom. Our facts and information from the text to answer our last question is, why does April have white circles around her eyes? Pale white circles ran from the top of her eyebrows to the bottom of her cheeks. That is the information we have from the text. Our prior knowledge that we know, sunglasses are worn over the eyes to block UV rays. The inference we can make, April was wearing sunglasses in the bright sun. So I guess we kind of found out that April wasn't in the courtroom for jury duty. Okay, so now, as we close up this lesson, I want you guys to remember to follow the formula when citing evidence to make your inferences. Remember, you're going to take your prior knowledge plus your textual evidence, and you're going to make that educated guess, as we know is our inference. So while you're at home, I want you guys to practice with this. You have 3 questions that you guys can answer, and you may pause the screen at this time so you guys can write these down in your graphic organizer. The first question is, what did the dog do? The second question you're going to explore is, how do you know the dog killed the cat? And the final question you're going to answer is, why did the dog give the man a bag of chips? So I'm going to play this video for you guys.
Honey, have you seen our cat?
Nope.
Okay. Alrighty. I'm sorry, students. So you guys can rewind that video and view that again so you can answer all 3 of those questions while you practice at home. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. It has been fun with you guys today, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.